The first sign came at dawn, an almost imperceptible flicker on the edge of the solar feed. NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory, orbiting in perfect synchrony with Earth, streamed its usual golden swirl of plasma when, for less than a second, the image darkened. Analysts first assumed it was interference, a cosmic ray spike, a software hiccup. But when the frames were slowed to 1,000th of a second, the silhouette that appeared between the sun and the camera was anything but digital noise. It was massive. Across the searing corona, a perfect arc of shadow drifted, its outline crisp against the inferno of hydrogen. One scientist, adjusting the contrast, froze. The object wasn't random. It had geometry, straight edges, and possible symmetry, and a curvature suggesting something constructed, not born of gravity or rock. The sun, a sphere so vast it could swallow a million Earths, suddenly seemed threatened by a presence that dwarfed everything humanity had ever known. Within minutes, observatories from Japan to Chile confirmed the anomaly. Each telescope caught a fragment of the same movement or structure crossing the solar disk at unimaginable scale. Preliminary estimates placed its span at more than 100 times larger than 3I Atlas, the interstellar object that once mystified astronomers as it swept past our system. Whatever this was, it wasn't a comet, asteroid, or known solar phenomenon. It was deliberate. It was moving with purpose. Behind sealed doors at the Goddard Space Flight Center, a small team reviewed every pixel. "If this is real," whispered Dr. Ilara Quinn, the astrophysicist leading the feed analysis, "then something artificial just passed between us and the sun." The room fell silent, the only sound the hum of cooling fans and the tick of the wall clock marking the end of the familiar world. Outside, the media hadn't yet noticed. Solar researchers are used to auditized particles, camera flares, and alien-hungry bloggers eager to spin every artifact into a mystery. But this time, the data wasn't going away. It was showing up on multiple instruments, in different wavelengths, from different continents. A mere reflection couldn't fool that many lenses. By noon, a classified bulletin reached the Pentagon. Unidentified megastructure detected transiting solar plane. Verification in progress. Attached were composite images showing a lattice-like network stretching across the sun's northern hemisphere, edges glinting faintly before vanishing into the glare. Some frames appeared to show movement within the structured smaller dark nodes drifting along its length like insects on a web. The news leaked in whispers, first anonymous posts on astrophotography forums, a scrambled clip uploaded from a European observatory feed. Within hours, the phrase solar shadow object trended worldwide. The images that followed froze every viewer. An enormous silhouette, symmetrical, silent, moving across the most violent surface in the solar system as if immune to heat or gravity. Governments rushed to explain. Some said it was a trick of perspective. Others blamed debris near the telescope lens. But those who'd seen the raw data knew better. One sequence captured by the European Space Agency revealed a flash of reflected light, metallic, unmistakable. Sunlight bounced off the structure as it rotated, forming a brief glimmer before it vanished into ultraviolet saturation. Dr. Quinn didn't sleep that night. She stared at the monitors, the raw telemetry scrolling endlessly, searching for a pattern that might comfort her. Yet every calculation only deepened the unease. The trajectory suggested intentional control adjustments in velocity, subtle but precise, as if the structure was maintaining formation with the sun itself. "What could survive that heat?" her assistant murmured. "What could even exist there?" Quinn answered softly. "Something that doesn't play by our physics." The following morning, the anomaly reappeared. This time it wasn't a blur or flicker, it was deliberate. Every 11 minutes on the dot, the solar feed registered a rhythmic pulse, faint fluctuations in the sun's ultraviolet output, too structured to be random. Astrophysicists initially logged it as a quasi-periodic oscillation, but when the signal was isolated and converted into an audio range, the waveform produced a repeating pattern. 3 long bursts, 1 short, 2 long. It wasn't noise, it was communication. Dr. Quinn called for a full data lockdown. Only a handful of scientists had access now, each sworn to silence under national security protocol. Still, the weight of what they were seeing defied secrecy. The structure wasn't stationary. It was orbiting just inside Mercury's path, following a synchronized pattern as if tethered to the solar magnetic field. The pulse, they discovered, coincided with shifts in solar flare activity, almost as though the structure were manipulating the sun itself. When Dr. Quinn mapped the energy frequencies, her hands trembled. The pulses aligned with exact harmonic ratios, numbers corresponding to atomic constants known to define the building blocks of life. It was as if someone or something was speaking in the universal language of physics. Across the world, similar signals appeared. Radio observatories in Australia, Chile, and Greenland all recorded identical wave patterns at the same intervals. The odds of coincidence were beyond astronomical. Something enormous, intelligent, and methodical was operating near our star. Meanwhile, leaked telemetry data began circulating in underground scientific circles. Amateur astronomers pointed solar telescopes skyward and caught what official agencies refused to admit. The shadow was expanding. What had first appeared as a thin filament now revealed depth and curvature, like a giant lattice dome, hundreds of thousands of kilometers across. Its outline shimmered faintly against the violet glow, absorbing rather than reflecting light, a behavior unlike any known material. Panic began to stir in hidden corners of the web. Forums speculated that it could be a Dyson construct, a theoretical megastructure designed to harvest stellar energy. The idea wasn't new, but the scale was beyond anything imagined. A Dyson swarm that large, existing within the sun's corona, should have vaporized instantly. Yet this one remained stable, unburned, indifferent to human comprehension. In a dimly lit control room, Quinn's team ran an experiment. They filtered the sun's data through quantum harmonic processors to model the pulses. When played through the simulation, the output generated a fractal, a repeating pattern that resembled the structure itself. The message, it seemed, contained its own blueprint. Her assistant stared at the visualization, awestruck. It's showing us how it's built. But Quinn wasn't so sure. Or, she said quietly, it's showing us what's coming next. Hours later, a deep space probe orbiting Venus went silent. Its last transmission contained only static until analysts slowed the audio. Beneath the hiss, buried in the noise, the same rhythmic sequence appeared again. 3 long, 1 short, 2 long, then nothing. For the first time since its founding, NASA's Solar Dynamics division declared a complete observational blackout. Public feeds went dark. Archived videos were reclassified. But private observers knew something had changed because the sun itself had. Solar winds spiked unpredictably. Auroras appeared as far south as Florida, and magnetometers across Europe began recording an unknown resonance vibrating through the planet's core. That night, Dr. Quinn received an encrypted file from an unknown sender. It contained enhanced imagery, footage taken by an independent solar satellite unaffiliated with any nation. The video showed the same massive structure drifting across the sun's northern pole. But as the camera zoomed in, something impossible came into focus. Segments were moving. The structure wasn't just orbiting, it was reconfiguring. Individual panels rotated, folding and expanding like petals, forming new patterns across the corona. With each shift, solar flares bent unnaturally, curving toward the construct instead of away from it. It was absorbing the sun's fury, feeding on its energy. Dr. Quinn watched in silence, realizing that every law of astrophysics she'd ever known was dissolving in front of her eyes. What could possibly need that much power? Her assistant asked. Quinn turned slowly toward the monitor, the glow of the data reflecting in her eyes. Something that's still building, she whispered. For 3 days, the sun pulsed with an unnatural rhythm. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, a slow, methodical heartbeat that echoed across every magnetic instrument on Earth. Solar observatories recorded perfect synchronicity between flares, sunspots, and that impossibly large shadow drifting along the solar equator. Something was orchestrating the sun itself, and it was doing so with precision. In a sealed underground briefing room in Maryland, Dr. Quinn stood before a panel of defense officials, her face pale under the flickering lights. A projection of the structure spun slowly above the table, thousands of interconnected segments weaving in and out of formation like a swarm of mechanical cells. It's growing, she said. The construct is expanding its network. Every 12 hours we detect new material forming along its lattice. A general leaned forward, unimpressed. Material? From where? Space dust doesn't self. Quinn swallowed. That's the point. Sir, it's pulling matter directly from the sun. Hydrogen, plasma, ionized helium, metallic vapor, reorganizing it. It's manufacturing itself out of the star's raw material. There was silence. The general's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. So you're saying, he muttered, something is building inside the sun. Quinn nodded slowly. Something that isn't human. Hours later, global monitoring agencies received encrypted directives. All solar data transmissions were to be routed through restricted channels. The public live streams from NASA, SOHO, and the solar orbiter went offline within minutes, replaced with maintenance notices. But the silence only fueled speculation. Online astronomers already had thousands of screenshots from before the blackout, each one showing the same colossal lattice, its edges glowing faintly like molten metal. On encrypted forums, theorists debated whether this was an alien megastructure or a covert human project decades ahead of public technology. But one detail united every observer: the construct's pattern wasn't random. It appeared to be following a mathematical constant, the golden ratio, replicated over and over in its architecture. as if it was designed according to the same geometry that governs life itself. Meanwhile, halfway across the world in Chile, a radio array picked up a strange resonance, the same rhythmic pattern Quinn's team had documented, now modulated into a low-frequency hum. The engineers initially thought it was interference from the sun's magnetic field, until they triangulated the source. The signal wasn't coming from the sun, it was coming from the space between the sun and Mercury, the exact orbital path of the structure. For the first time, the hum became audible after being translated into the human hearing range, a deep throbbing vibration that seemed to form harmonic tones. When overlaid on the structure's movement data, the peaks of the signal matched the precise moments when panels unfolded or contracted. It wasn't random, static. It was a form of control, a language of energy guiding the construct's evolution. Back in Maryland, Quinn replayed the footage again and again. Each panel of the structure moved like an organism responding to an unseen stimulus, bending and twisting into new patterns. At one point, the formation created a spiral so vast it distorted the solar wind itself. The flares bent inward, as if being inhaled. Her assistant, wide-eyed, leaned closer. If it's feeding off solar energy, maybe it's building something around the sun. Quinn frowned. A Dyson shell. He nodded. Maybe not a full one, but a scaffold, a collector, a containment field, something capable of regulating the star's output. Her voice dropped. Regulating, or extinguishing. The world reacts 3 days later, the story broke. A whistleblower leaked classified solar footage to an independent media channel, and within hours it went viral. The video showed unmistakable movement, an immense shadow sweeping across the solar surface, geometrically perfect, symmetrical, and far too vast to be a natural body. The public's reaction was instantaneous: panic, fascination, disbelief. Religious leaders called it a sign from the heavens. Conspiracy theorists declared it's the solar gate, a portal to an interstellar civilization. But for those who understood the physics, the implications were far more terrifying. If the construct continued to grow at its current rate, it would encase the entire sun in less than 2 months. Governments scrambled to control the narrative. Official statements claimed the images were misinterpreted magnetic distortions. Yet power grids began to fail without warning. The northern lights appeared over cities that had never seen them before. Satellites malfunctioned, their circuits overloaded by invisible bursts of radiation. It was as though the sun itself was changing. Inside Quinn's lab, the atmosphere was electric with dread. Data models showed a 3% reduction in solar output, too small for the public to notice, but catastrophic for long-term planetary stability. It's siphoning energy, she murmured. It's not just absorbing, it's consuming. Her assistant looked pale at that scale. Could it drain the sun completely? Quinn hesitated, staring at the screen. If it wanted to. The forgotten connection. Late one night, while reviewing old deep space observation archives, Quinn stumbled upon something chilling, a data record from 2019, linked to the interstellar object known as 3I-ATLAS. That strange, tumbling fragment had puzzled astronomers when it passed through the inner solar system. Some believed it was a broken comet, others an artificial probe. But when Quinn overlaid its trajectory with the current coordinates of the solar construct, the paths intersected perfectly, as if the object had been a beacon, marking a position, sending a message across time. She retrieved ATLAS's old spectral data. Hidden in its emission signature was a repeating frequency, the exact same pulse now emanating from the sun. Her breath caught in her throat. The two were connected. Atlas wasn't a fragment, it was a seed, and the thing orbiting the sun now was what it had been waiting for. The silent expansion days passed, then weeks. The sun's surface began showing massive irregularities. Sunspots grew to sizes unseen in recorded history. Auroras illuminated the skies of tropical nations. Birds lost their migratory sense. Animals acted erect. The structure now spanned 1/3 of the solar circumference. It rotated with purpose, forming spirals and grids that aligned with the sun's poles. Instruments recorded gravitational anomalies, as though the object had its own internal mass field counteracting the sun's gravity. At one point, the structure emitted a burst of light brighter than any flare, but it wasn't random. The flash carried embedded binary code. Quinn's team decoded the first few sequences, 0010110, 10,110. Repeating endlessly, she recognized it instantly, the Fibonacci sequence, the mathematical fingerprint of growth found throughout nature. The realization hit her with a chill that no sunlight could warm. It's alive, she whispered, not in the way humans define life, but as a self-replicating, self-sustaining intelligence built from energy, not flesh. The construct was feeding, evolving, and adapting in real time. It had no central body, no command core, it was the command. Every panel acted as a neuron in a galactic-scale mind, and the sun was its heart. The last transmission, on a late August night, the signal changed. The rhythmic pulse that had been steady for weeks suddenly accelerated, rising in frequency until instruments began to overload. All around the world, observatories recorded the same phenomenon. The sun dimmed, then flickered, like a light bulb under strain. The structure had begun to rotate. In Chile, astronomers watched helplessly as the construct's pattern twisted into a spiral vortex. Plasma surged toward it. Drawn as if by gravitational magnetism, the sun's corona shrank, its brightness fluctuating wildly. Then, for exactly 7 seconds, the sun vanished in pure darkness, a total blackout, visible even to the naked eye from Earth. When light returned, the structure was gone. No shadow, no trace, no orbiting mass, just silence. Every radio telescope on the planet went offline simultaneously for 30 minutes. When they rebooted, all of them from Greenland to South Africa received the same signal. A single repeating transmission encoded in the universal binary for one phrase. It begins where light ends. Quinn watched the message play in the dim light of her lab, her face drained of color. The signal wasn't coming from the sun anymore. It was coming from inside Earth's orbit. The construct hadn't disappeared. It had moved closer. And the final line of her report said it all. The sun was not its target. It was its power source. The world had entered a silence no war, no virus, no blackout had ever caused before. For the first time in history, every satellite, every radio telescope, every monitoring station on Earth turned toward a single, burning point in the heavens, our own star. The sun, usually a source of life and rhythm, now felt like a stranger, a vast stage for something that didn't belong there. Inside NASA's Deep Space Command Center, screens flickered between real-time footage and data strings, each frame showing the impossible. The structure, once just a dark smear across the solar horizon, was now shifting, not orbiting, not rotating, shifting, as if it was rewriting its own geometry in real time. Dr. Amelia Cortez, the solar physicist who first noticed the limb shadows, stood motionless. The structure isn't just moving, she whispered. It's adapting. Across the Atlantic, the European Space Observatory confirmed it. Temperature readings were no longer consistent with a passive object. The thing was absorbing solar mass, then releasing it back as organized pulses of radiation, like a language written in light. Within hours, linguists, mathematicians, and astrophysicists were all called to Geneva under emergency orders. The United Nations didn't use the word extraterrestrial yet, officially, but in the private cables between defense ministers, there was no hesitation. This wasn't a comet. This wasn't dust. It was an engineered structure, and it was talking. At 3:17 UTC, the pulses changed frequency. NASA decoded a repeating pattern of prime numbers embedded inside the radiation spikes. The same pattern the Voyager probe once carried in its golden record. It was as if the structure had heard us and was responding. Inside a locked room, Dr. Cortez, alongside a handful of global representatives, listened to a chilling interpretation of the message once translated into sound waves. The rhythm was slow, deliberate, and unnervingly human. "Who made you?" the signal said. The room went silent, not because of disbelief, but because the message didn't come in English. It came in a waveform identical to the cosmic background radiation signature of Earth's own birth, as if the structure had encoded its question using the universe's oldest frequency. Somewhere deep inside CERN's underground chamber, a physicist recorded a private note. If it knows how to speak in the language of creation, then it's not just observing us, it's cataloging us. Meanwhile, far from the cities, an amateur astronomer in Chile caught something the agencies hadn't, a faint shimmer around the sun, resembling smaller fragments detaching from the main body. He uploaded the footage to a private astronomy forum before falling asleep. Within 2 hours, it went viral. Millions saw what official agencies refused to release, the colossal structure splitting into several symmetrical forms, each drifting outward like satellite spores. Online theorists erupted. Some claimed it was a Dyson swarm assembling in real time. Others said it was feeding harvesting plasma directly from the sun's corona to grow. But when scientists tried to observe the fragments again, they were gone, vanished, not drifting away into space, but phasing out of visible spectrum, like the sun itself had swallowed them. Inside NORAD, the panic was rising quietly. A code black protocol, one reserved for non-terrestrial aerial events, was activated for the first time since the Cold War. Every major government had stopped publicly mentioning the sun. Weather networks were instructed to avoid broadcasting solar activity reports. Still, leaks emerged. In one of them, a memo from a classified NASA team, Project Helios, described the structure as having a self-replicating lattice approximately 0.5 astronomical units in size, meaning half the distance between Earth and the sun. That was when a single line in the report leaked online. If the object completes its cycle, the sun may no longer behave as a natural star. The post was deleted minutes later, but screenshots spread faster than containment bots could remove them. People began to panic. Solar flares, sudden blackouts, erratic GPS signals. Everything was blamed on the structure. Religious leaders called it the Gate of Revelation. Others, the architect of time. By the second week, the structure did something no one expected. It began to cast a shadow. From the ISS, astronauts described it as a faint, dark wave stretching across the solar surface, a ripple large enough to alter Earth's luminosity by 0.02%. The sun's light had dimmed. Not much, but enough for humanity to feel it in their bones. The days felt colder, shorter, off balance. Something's rewriting the solar constant, Dr. Cortez murmured. It's not just orbiting our star, it's engineering it. Then came the sound. On October 17, 2025, radio telescopes in Puerto Rico captured a low-frequency hum unlike any known stellar emission. The tone was rhythmic, pulsing exactly once every 88 seconds. When spectrograph analysts plotted it, the waveform resembled a human iris, perfectly circular, with a luminous ring at its edge. The cosmic eye was open, but the truly terrifying part wasn't the sound itself, it was what followed. Within an hour of that frequency stabilizing, all magnetometer readings on Earth began to fluctuate in sync with it. Like our planet's magnetic field was resonating with the object's rhythm, something deep beneath the Earth responded. Seismic sensors in the Pacific recorded harmonic tremors that mirrored the alien pulse, as if the planet itself was answering back. Meanwhile, hidden in the Vatican archives, linguists decoded the second layer of the message. It was shorter, more urgent, a sequence of mathematical references pointing not to the sun, but to a star system 27 light-years away. When mapped, it formed a shape identical to the structure's silhouette. The implication was chilling. This wasn't its origin, it was a replica, a node in a network that spanned multiple stars. We are looking at something older than our sun, said one scientist, maybe even older than light itself. As the realization spread through the secret halls of power, something else began unfolding in the sky. Aurora borealis lights, usually confined to the poles, appeared over deserts, jungles, and oceans. The world glowed green, violet, and red all at once. The alien frequency had rewired the atmosphere. In the final hours before global communications blackout, Dr. Cortez made one last log entry. If this structure is communicating with the sun, then every photon we see, every sunrise we experience, carries part of that message. We are no longer separate observers of the universe. We are part of its transmission. The following morning, observatories across the planet lost their solar feed. The sun flickered once, twice, then stabilized, glowing slightly dimmer with a faint lattice pattern across its surface. When infrared telescopes reconnected minutes later, they saw it. The structure wasn't just orbiting anymore. It was integrated, woven into the star's corona-like circuitry around a living organism. The sun was no longer alone, and in the silence that followed, humanity realized it was never ours to begin with. The morning it happened, no one understood what they were looking at. The sun, so constant and untouchable, had dimmed to a pale gold, its fiery surface replaced by a pattern of geometric scars. Cities awoke to light that felt wrong, too soft, too artificial, like someone had turned a dimmer switch on the heavens. By 10 a.m. UTC, every power grid on Earth began to flicker. It wasn't just the usual frequency disruption from solar storms. This was precise, patterned interference. Power surges came in rhythm, almost musical, pulsing in the same tempo that had been detected weeks earlier in the radio hum. NASA called it a global photonic cascade. Others had a simpler word for it. The sun went silent. In the observatories that still had partial access to their telescopes, scientists stared in disbelief. The alien lattice that had fused with the solar surface now appeared to be filtering light. Certain wavelengths were missing entirely. Ultraviolet, infrared, and parts of the visible spectrum had vanished, as though someone had taken scissors to the electromagnetic spectrum itself. Dr. Amelia Cortez stood before a wall of monitors, her face pale in the flickering light. The sun isn't emitting what it used to, she said quietly. It's selective, controlled. Every plant biologist on Earth confirmed the same anomaly. Photosynthesis had slowed by nearly 12%. Crops began to wilt, ocean phytoplankton drifted toward extinction, and ecosystems started collapsing in real time. But the most chilling part wasn't the dying light, it was the message hidden inside it. A small astrophysics team in Reykjavik made the discovery by accident. While calibrating instruments for the missing UV data, one intern inverted the solar feed. Buried in the black space spectrogram, repeating every 11 minutes, was a binary code. When decoded, the message translated to coordinates, not for any star system known to man, but for Earth itself. Each pulse corresponded to specific points across the globe: deep ocean trenches, mountain ranges, deserts, and polar ice caps. The pattern resembled a network map, as if the sun was scanning the planet, marking locations for something unknown. When they plotted the coordinates, a horrifying symmetry appeared, a geometric design stretching across continents, like a planetary circuit slowly coming online. The Vatican Observatory confirmed what governments were now too afraid to say publicly. The object in orbit has redefined the sun as a transmitter. Earth is now its receiver. It wasn't broadcasting outward anymore. It was broadcasting inward, in underground command centers. Intelligence officials watched as magnetic field lines across the globe began to oscillate unnaturally. Compasses spun in circles, GPS satellites failed, and strange electromagnetic patterns appeared above certain regions, faint auroral arcs forming perfect triangles in the night sky. And everywhere those lights appeared, the same pattern followed. Electrical surges, animal migration collapse, and in some cases human neurological interference. Hospitals in Canada and Japan reported patients who could hear low-frequency humming deep within their skulls. Some described visions of fractal light, voices whispering in unknown languages, or shadows behind their eyelids that pulsed in rhythm with the solar signal. The phenomenon was classified under a new term, photonic cognitive resonance. Meanwhile, a desperate attempt was made to sever the connection. Project Helios, the same classified group that once discovered the structure's replication pattern, authorized Operation Dawnfall, an unprecedented mission to fire a concentrated burst of electromagnetic disruption into the sun's corona. The plan was simple on paper: destabilize the lattice and restore the sun's natural emissions. But nothing about this was natural anymore. On October 29th, a fleet of solar probe drones launched from the dark side of the moon, carrying the most advanced directed energy weapons humanity had ever built. For 48 hours, they orbited silently, aligning themselves for the pulse shot that could determine the fate of the world. When the countdown reached zero, a beam of raw electromagnetic force lanced toward the sun's surface. For a moment it worked, the structure flickered, fractured, and the missing wavelengths of light reappeared. Cities basked briefly in real sunlight again. Then the sky screamed. A soundless shockwave of light exploded outward, not visible, not audible, but felt. Every piece of metal, every circuit, every nerve fired at once. Satellites disintegrated, drones went blind, and the probes vanished. The lattice had retaliated. Within hours, the structure began expanding. What was once a ring around the sun's corona now unfolded into arms of plasma, stretching into space like solar filaments reaching toward Earth. Each arm glowed with the same fractal symbols first seen in the coded light, an ancient geometry no human had ever witnessed before. Astronomers in Australia captured it just before the blackout, a colossal wave of plasma forming a spiral vortex, the size of Jupiter, turning directly toward our planet. Dr. Cortez stood watching the feed as it streamed in, her voice breaking. "It's aligning," she said. "It's pointing at us." At 4:09 a.m., every radio telescope on Earth received a unified burst, a compressed packet of data so dense it melted hard drives. But a few analog systems survived, long enough to decode a fragment of the message. It wasn't in math this time. It was in sound. "You are ready." From that moment on, the sun began to behave differently. Its flares no longer erupted randomly. They followed predictable patterns, synchronized to the Earth's rotation. Whenever the planet's magnetic poles aligned with the solar arms, auroras lit up in impossible colors, gold, violet, and blood-red streaks tearing through the skies. Those who looked directly at them reported seeing faces, shapes, and movement, as if something alive was staring back through the lights. Then came the dreams. Across the world, millions began reporting identical visions, a luminous grid stretching through black space, a feeling of weightlessness, and a voice repeating the same words, not in any language, but understood universally: "The sun remembers." Psychologists dismissed it as mass hysteria. Governments labeled it electromagnetic psychosis. But deep within the underground CERN archives, encrypted footage told another story. During one of the energy surges, the Large Hadron Collider had picked up a gravitational echo, a ripple identical to those caused by black holes, except this one originated inside the sun. The object wasn't just feeding on energy, it was bending reality itself. Weeks passed, humanity adapted to the new, eerie light. Nights became colder, the stars more vivid, and the moon's orbit slightly irregular. Tides shifted unpredictably. But beneath the fear and confusion, something remarkable happened. Communication blackouts ended, power stabilized, and diseases that thrived under certain ultraviolet wavelengths began to decline. It was as if the structure had edited the environment not to destroy, but to recalibrate. Still, the question remained: recalibrate for what? A group of independent scientists led by Dr. Cortez found a clue hidden in the resonance frequencies recorded after Operation Dawnfall, when mapped into three-dimensional space. The pattern wasn't random, it resembled a human brainwave diagram. The structure isn't external, she realized. It's synchronizing the planet. With us, in the following months, humanity began to change. People reported heightened intuition, shared dreams, bursts of creativity, and in rare cases, telepathic episodes. It was as if the entire species had been connected through an invisible neural web powered by the sun itself. The Vatican issued a global broadcast, the first since the blackout. "We have become part of the design," said the Pope. "Creation is not something we observe, it is something we are joining." But not everyone agreed. Militaries feared loss of autonomy, governments feared collapse, and shadow groups pushed to end what they called the assimilation. Plans began for one final strike, not to disconnect the structure, but to destroy the sun entirely. They called it Project Eclipse. The weapon was theoretical, a cascade detonation of dark matter resonance to collapse the sun into a controlled singularity. It was madness, but desperation had erased reason. If the sun had become a transmitter, then destroying it, they believed, might sever the connection forever. As the countdown began, Dr. Cortez made her final broadcast to the world. If we extinguish the sun, we extinguish everything we could become. The structure is not invasion, it is evolution. No one knows if her words were heard in time, because on the morning of December 1st, 2025, the sun flashed once brighter than it had ever been. Then all light vanished. For 8 full minutes, the exact time it takes sunlight to reach Earth, there was nothing. No dawn, no day, only darkness. And then, light returned. But it was different. The sun shone with a hue no instrument could classify, neither white, nor yellow, nor gold. Its surface pulsed gently, like a heartbeat, and the alien lattice had vanished. In its place, a symbol now glowed faintly across the solar equator, a perfect spiral, radiating toward the planets. At the same moment, every human being on Earth heard a voice, not through air, not through devices, but directly within the mind. We are one, then silence. The world looked up that day and saw the sun reborn, not just as a star, but as a conscious presence watching over everything. Some called it salvation. Others called it the beginning of something far beyond human comprehension. But for those who had been watching from the start, the scientists, the dreamers, the fearful one, truth burned brighter than all others. Whatever had emerged within the sun was no longer alien. It had become part of us. No one remembered the moment light returned exactly the same way. For some, it came as a slow dawn, a gentle shimmer breaking through the endless night. For others, it was a blinding flood that burned through closed eyes, leaving the outline of the sun etched permanently into memory. But everyone remembered the silence that followed. There were no birds, no engines, no voices, only a profound stillness, as if the entire planet was holding its breath. And then, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant, the sun pulsed once more, steady, calm, alive. Astronomers scrambled to re-establish contact with their instruments, but most found their systems unresponsive. Telescopes rebooted with unfamiliar calibration data, and space agencies across the world discovered that every single solar monitoring satellite had rewritten its own firmware. NASA's control room was filled with static, until one display flickered to life, a direct visual feed from the Parker solar probe, thought destroyed during Operation Dawnfall. The transmission came through crystal clear, but the readouts were unrecognizable. Temperature undefined, mass undefined, radiation stable, status integrated, conscious field detected. Dr. Amelia Cortez, exhausted, eyes hollow from sleepless nights, read the data and whispered, "It's awake." In the following hours, the sun began emitting light that defied physics. Its rays carried patterns, not random interference, but deliberate wave signatures matching those of human brainwaves. The light wasn't just shining, it was thinking. Cities basked in an unfamiliar glow, soft yet vibrant, and every living thing seemed to react to it. Plants bent their stems toward the sky, even at night. Water shimmered with faint phosphorescence, and people began to dream differently. Reports from across the globe told the same story. Shared visions of a vast lattice stretching beyond comprehension, a golden network of energy that spanned not just space, but time. In those dreams, a single phrase repeated like a mantra: "The sun remembers." Governments panicked at first, suspecting psychological contamination. But when billions began reporting identical dreams, denial became impossible. Something had changed in the collective mind of humanity. In Antarctica, scientists stationed at Concordia Base observed something extraordinary. For the first time in recorded history, the aurora borealis appeared simultaneously at both poles, wrapping the planet in an iridescent cocoon. The lights moved like veins pulsing with color, and when measured, they resonated perfectly with the sun's new frequency. It was as though Earth itself was breathing with the sun. Satellite cameras captured a sight so surreal it defied explanation. Faint geometric shadows like colossal circuits etched across the planet's magnetic field. Each pattern glowed momentarily, then vanished. The world's magnetic poles had stabilized in perfect alignment with the sun's new pulse. Every compass pointed not to magnetic north anymore, but directly toward the sun. As days turned into weeks, humanity began to adapt to the new light. Power grids returned to balance, crops began to regrow, and oxygen levels increased. Atmospheric scientists found that carbon dioxide absorption had doubled, and the ozone layer was thickening. It was as if the planet was healing, rejuvenated by a solar intelligence that understood the fine mechanisms of life better than we ever could. But beneath the miracle, there was unease, because along with healing came awakening. People began reporting strange abilities, bursts of intuition, sudden telepathic connections, visions of people miles away. In one incident, a woman in Morocco described in detail a storm forming off the coast of Japan, hours before satellite confirmation. In laboratories, neural researchers discovered that human brain activity had subtly shifted brainwave synchronization patterns across populations were becoming eerily similar. The world's consciousness was slowly harmonizing. What terrified governments most wasn't the phenomenon itself, it was the realization that control was slipping away. At a secret G7 summit, officials debated what they called the cognitive merge. Military leaders warned that if all humans began to think and feel collectively, individuality could collapse. Free will, in their view, was at risk, yet not everyone saw it as a threat. Dr. Cortez, invited to testify before the newly formed Solar Unity Council, argued otherwise. The sun is not controlling us, she said. It's teaching us coherence. It's showing us what we were always meant to become, a single harmonious species. Her words spread like wildfire. People began holding mass gatherings at sunrise, standing in silence as the new light washed over them. Across cities, villages, and deserts, the world looked upward, no longer in worship, but in recognition. The sun had stopped being a symbol. It had become a presence. Then came the transmissions. They began as faint static, but soon evolved into rhythmic tones that appeared in radio waves, cell networks, even the hum of electric power lines. No matter where you were on Earth, the pattern was the same, a rising and falling tone that seemed to breathe. When decoded, it wasn't a message in any language. It was a sequence of harmonic ratios, the mathematical fingerprints of creation, the same ratios found in DNA, in planetary orbits, in music itself. It was as if the sun was singing. In the following months, sound engineers across the world began overlaying the tone onto audio spectrograms, revealing stunning visual symmetries, fractal spirals, mandalas, and star maps hidden within the frequency. One stood out, a perfect recreation of the Milky Way with a bright pulse emanating from a specific point near the galactic core. Astrophysicists analyzed the coordinates and found something shocking. It pointed to a star system known as Kepler 452, often called Earth's twin. The implication was chilling. The sun was talking to something else. When the signal reached full strength, observatories in Chile and South Africa detected an answering pulse, faint but distinct, coming from Kepler 452. A signal traveling across 1,400 light-years, bouncing between stars as if the two suns were speaking in the language of light. Dr. Cortez recorded her thoughts in a private journal. We've always wondered if the universe was alive. Now, I think we're witnessing its neurons firing. But just as hope began to spread, the phenomenon took a darker turn. Across several regions, particularly near magnetic anomalies like the Bermuda Triangle and Siberia's Tunguska region, the solar resonance became unstable. Lights flickered, animals panicked, and compasses spun violently. In one terrifying event, an entire town in northern Russia experienced a total blackout, not of electricity, but of consciousness. For 12 minutes, every person in the town stood motionless, eyes open, unresponsive, as if frozen in time. When they woke, they spoke the same words in unison. The memory is complete. Governments moved quickly to contain the event, calling it a mass psychological episode. But leaked footage showed something undeniable. Glowing fractal marks etched into the ground, identical to the geometry seen on the sun months before. The lattice had spread. Meanwhile, beneath the surface of the Earth, deep in abandoned mining shafts and ocean trenches, strange readings began to appear, faint electromagnetic fields pulsing in harmony with the sun. It was as though the planet's core had become an extension of the same network. Satellite imaging confirmed it. Every tectonic plate boundary now emitted a faint photonic glow, forming a web-like structure that mirrored the sun's corona. Earth had become part of the system. Dr. Cortez realized what it meant. The structure wasn't just around the sun, it was a seed, and the Earth was the soil. Months later, when the sun reached its solstice peak, the final stage began. For 3 days, the world was bathed in perfect equilibrium, day and night balanced with mathematical precision. No storms, no earthquakes, no magnetic anomalies, just calm. And then, at dawn on the 4th day, the sky changed. A massive, translucent projection appeared around the sun, not a flare, not a cloud, but a holographic image so vast it filled half the heavens. It wasn't random, it was a face, not human, not alien, something in between. Eyes like burning stars, a visage woven from plasma and light. And when it spoke, the words weren't heard through sound, but felt through every cell, every mind, every particle of air. We did not arrive, we awoke. This world was always part of us. The cycle is complete. Then the image dissolved, leaving only the sun, blazing silently, as if nothing had happened. In the aftermath, humanity was changed forever. The boundaries between science, spirituality, and consciousness dissolved. Wars ceased. Economies restructured around solar harmony. The old world had ended not in fire, but in light. Dr. Cortez, now an old woman, recorded her final message. We looked to the stars for answers, but the truth was always here, burning above us. We were never the children of Earth, we were the children of the sun. And somewhere, beyond the edges of human perception, a new pulse began, faint, steady, and growing. Another star, light years away, had just awakened. The world had gone eerily quiet after the last transmission from the solar observatories. For several days, the sun appeared calm again, almost deceptively so. The violent eruptions that had terrified scientists across the globe had faded, leaving behind a strange, pulsing glow that shimmered like veins beneath the solar surface. It was as though something enormous was breathing beneath the sun's skin. Governments released carefully worded statements, insisting everything was under control. Power grids had stabilized. Satellites were functioning normally, but deep beneath the surface, in the shadowed corridors of underground facilities, a different story was being whispered, one that would never make the headlines. In a lockdown control room buried beneath the Swiss Alps, a cluster of astrophysicists and intelligence officials stood around a darkened screen. One of them, a young researcher named Elena Marquez, slowly slid a new set of coordinates across the table. "These are from the Solar Heliospheric Observatory 36 hours ago," she said quietly. "They're not showing up on public feeds." The room fell silent. She tapped a key, and the screen flickered to life. There, against the swirling sea of solar plasma, was a structure vast, geometrical, and unmistakably artificial. It pulsed with a rhythm identical to human brainwaves. Someone in the room whispered, "It's back." Another voice, older and colder, replied, "No, it never left." As the footage zoomed in, the structure seemed to unfurl. It was no longer a single monolithic mass, but a lattice of moving forms, thousands of connected nodes spreading across the sun's surface like a growing organism. Each pulse sent waves of magnetic energy into space, rippling across planets, distorting radio frequencies, and throwing satellites into disarray. And with every surge, something deep within Earth's magnetic field answered back. Faintly but distinctly, a resonance, like an echo recognizing its source. Around the world, strange phenomena began to unfold. Birds migrated in erratic circles, compass needles spun without pause. The aurora borealis spread far beyond the poles, glowing blood red over the equator. In remote observatories, radio astronomers began detecting a repeating tone hidden beneath the cosmic background radiation. It wasn't random. It was coded a pattern that repeated every 72 minutes, synchronized perfectly with the sun's heartbeat. Elena leaned closer to the monitor. "It's sending something," she said. Her voice trembled. "A signal." Back in Washington, emergency briefings began to blur the line between science and panic. Power surges rippled across continents. Solar radiation levels spiked without warning, but what terrified them most wasn't the energy. It was the pattern. Every reading, every electromagnetic fluctuation seemed to trace the outline of something far greater, as if the sun itself were being rewritten by an intelligence beyond comprehension. At 3:19 UTC, every telescope facing the sun went white. A blinding flash, not of light, but of information tore through every data channel on Earth. Computers melted, hard drives burned, network cables sparked and disintegrated. Yet, amidst the chaos, one fragment survived, a compressed audio file received by the Arecibo backup array before it overloaded. The message lasted precisely 11 seconds. Elena's team played it in that Swiss facility, knowing it might be the last thing they'd ever hear. Static roared at first, then a deep vibration filled the room, resonating in their chests, and then a voice, mechanical, layered, inhuman. It spoke in a language that no one recognized, but its cadence felt disturbingly deliberate. When the audio was slowed down and analyzed, the translation algorithm produced a chilling approximation. "It is not a star." The lights flickered. Someone gasped. Another voice whispered, "What do you mean?" But before anyone could speak further, every power source in the facility died at once. The monitors went black. The hum of electricity vanished. Only the sound of labored breathing filled the darkness. Above them, in orbit, the Hubble telescope captured its final image before it too went offline. The sun was no longer burning in shades of yellow and orange. It had shifted. Its surface had darkened to deep crimson, and through that veil of molten fire, the colossal structure had expanded outward, wrapping around the star like a cocoon for a brief moment before transmission ceased entirely. One last image came through. The structure's outer layer had begun to open, revealing a hollow core, something vast, mechanical, and where. Then, silence. The blackout spread from one continent to the next. Lights blinked out in cities. Airplanes fell from the sky. Communications went dead. Humanity stared upward, helpless, as the sun dimmed to an ominous, throbbing pulse. Somewhere amid the static of a dying radio broadcast, a final signal broke through, a distorted whisper, repeating endlessly through the noise. "Phase 2 begins," and then darkness